Angeles?
Yeah. Welcome back, live from Los Angeles. We are honoring #FridayFeels, and I'm so incredibly honored to be sitting next to Coach Carl. You've written countless books, given amazing talks, and you are really, truly embracing what it means to be masculine in today's world, right?
It's exciting.
It's very exciting. How would you define that?
Gosh, for me, as I mentioned earlier, the beast, but men are also gentle and the beast, I think. And as we were just talking, most men only see themselves as one dimension, one part of themselves, one aspect of masculinity. But we also have the feminine side. And that doesn't necessarily make us a woman, it's a part of who we are, just as you have a masculine side and a feminine side. And to have it all, which is what men are really after, to have it all, to keep it all together, they've got to own both sides of who they are until it's just one solid unit.
But when you say the feminine side to most men, how do they embrace that?
They don't.
I would imagine that's very difficult.
There's two types of guys that I see out there. One is the alpha guy who's very headstrong. And I call him, he's stuck in his head or living from that place, lots of willpower. But he's leaving his heart and soul and his purpose out of the equation in what he does. And then you have the other guy who's so in his heart, he never gets off the couch and does anything because he's just so happy being joyful. And so we want both guys in one body. And I see that as the new masculine breaking away from the old masculine.
I love that. They say that the greatest challenge men face today is having it all figured out and holding it all together. And I agree. I think it's intense for men in today's modern world.
We subscribe to this model of men are just here to protect and provide. And that model is very exhausting and burdensome. You know, a lot of men feel alone even in their marriage because everything is their responsibility, and if they fail, our fear is we'll lose everything, including our wife and our kids. And so I'm trying to get men to break out of that model and into a more collaborative, co-creative model.
And so how can women help in that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think they are, because women are becoming more independent and successful in their own way and less dependent on men. And that actually relieves a lot of the pressure from men. I talk to men all the time who, just last night a client called and said, I was on a first date and this woman paid for me. I'm really uncomfortable with that. That's not the way that it's supposed to be. And I said, you should feel relieved that she's independent and successful. That's an opportunity for gratitude because you can be a better team. So I think that women can support it the most by helping draw out his purpose, and she can align with that to support him the most. Because the masculine has to be on purpose in order for him to really protect and provide his goddess.
Right.
I just love that. It's such an important point. And so what I hear you saying essentially is that when men embrace both sides, all sides, really that they're in a better position not only for themselves but their families and for women in general.
He's going to feel so much more freedom. He's not going to be proving himself. He's not going to have to strategize or manipulate his way to achieve his goals. He will be trusting himself and knowing that he's just here to manifest his purpose.
Right.
Just like you are, just like I am. And that's what really matters.
So we know that in self-development, majority of women consume self-development. It's like 70+%. How are you getting men to go, oh, this is not, I shouldn't be ashamed in going to a conference or having a coach? How do you get them over that hurdle to say this is powerful?
Sure, there's two ways. One is focus on results with them because that always attracts the masculine as results. The other piece is I market to their wife because she'll make the decision
Smart
for them.
man.
So much smarter than me. I just threatened him. I'm like, bro, I'm good, dude. We'll have to get our blows over this. You're going to get some love from this conference, dang it. Yeah. That's so awesome. Wow. And I know that, with the books and everything like that, your sort of impact is just continuing to grow and grow and grow. But it wasn't always that way. So can you talk to us a little bit about, how you got to this place now where, you're just this well-integrated man and you're teaching and modeling for other men, how to be that too? How'd you get there?
At a very young age, I saw men in the way they interacted with women, how they worked 40, 50 hours a week and really weren't present with their kids. And I'm subscribed from that. I didn't want to go that route, but I also didn't find a man who I was inspired like. So, like Seth, I started out as a massage therapist, headed to medical school, and a woman gave me a free ticket to a Tony Robbins seminar.
Wow.
And I said, I'd rather not write prescriptions, I'd rather be coaching people. And that's how it all started. That was back in 1999.
Wow.
And I've been doing coaching and consulting ever since.
Incredible. What's been the most difficult part of the journey for you?
Oh, wow. Probably trusting the process, because as men, we like to be in control and make things happen, and a lot of life happens just naturally and easily. And it makes no sense to men. Women get it, but it makes no sense to men. So I think I've always been courageous in facing the fears and willing to embrace it. It's trusting the process that it's all going to work out,
It's everything.
Right?
Everything.
Yeah. That's it.
So, what did you hear controversy with Tony Robbins this week?
I did.
What do you think?
Everybody
Tell us.
was
We want to
bombarding me.
know.
So I did something really unique. Rather than listen to the words, I hit the mute button and I watched the interaction. And what I got out of that is the woman did not feel safe. It was not a safe conversation to have. That was the first thing. And as a leader and as a man, it's our job to create that safety for women. The Me Too movement is a cry for women don't feel safe. And men aren't creating that. But the challenge with it is that men also don't feel safe in their masculine. So we're manifesting that. And now we're getting called out on it.
Wow, that's very profound what you said.
Isn't it?
Yeah, really well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just, it's, and part of the reason it's profound for so many reasons. What resonates with me so deeply is that in my experience, I've noticed that I've probably been I'm least loving when I'm most in fear, right? Or I'm most insecure. And so I've tried to remember that when somebody's that way with me, and like this person feels fear, insecurity. And so my job essentially is to try and create a safe space for them.
Right.
Right? But it's got to be really tough, I think, particularly, and that's why it's so important that men like yourself, hopefully like me, obviously like that, are supporting the sort of creation and holding a space, a safe space, so that men and women can thrive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. It's, I bring that safety. It's constantly remembering that it's okay to have shame. It's okay that you have insecurities. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no blame, shame, or fault in this. But you just get to feel that and get to be with it. And it will discharge itself. You will move past that. But it's so hard for men to feel vulnerable and stay loving at the same time, which is also why we have challenges being present when a woman is in her emotions and what to do with it, because we're not doing a good enough job relating to our own.
So what tools would you recommend for men and or women that want to sort of stay in that place of being both vulnerable but also showing up in a way that's supportive, they're wanting to be both self-loving but also share love with others? What do you recommend? What tools do you recommend?
A lot. I think the easiest, most applicable one is I have them write out their shame, their judgments, and their internal dialogue that's going on that they probably haven't shared with anyone else. Once they're able to do that, they start to get a little bit more clear, and on top of it, rather than having those emotions own them, they can start to engage with them and realize this isn't that big of a deal. Like, men will come back to me and say, I thought it was going to be really difficult. Like, I was resisting it, I was crying about it, I didn't want to do it. And now it's like, wow, I feel free, the load is off. That's the first step. And then I start having them go into doing kindness and love exercises with their body, with certain words of affirmation, so that they're turning inwards. And we've been so externally driven of chasing the white rabbit, and that's our relationship to pretty much everything. And now you get to know this amazing person who's just screaming on the inside to know you. I mean, men are really screaming and longing for something bigger than what they've been living. You mentioned earlier today your higher self or your higher purpose.
So I want to know, what advice would you give to somebody out there, a man that's in a power position like a CEO or something, and he is maybe afraid of hiring that good-looking woman because he's afraid of what that relationship? What would you say to somebody out there?
He's got to be very clear in who he is, and his intentions need to be very transparent. And if he is in that place of authenticity, he's going to make the right decisions.
But so if his intention is, wow, I'm attracted to this woman, how do I work with this woman, and I have feelings, whatever level, with this person, how would he deal with that?
Well, if he hires her, he probably won't. I mean, that really is a tough situation. And so I would take him to a place of what's really missing in you that you think you want to be with her, especially if he's married.
Oh.
Boom.
Boom.
Two
Mic drop.
bombs.
You've really created a very integrative framework and broke it down into very approachable things for men. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, with the access, the embody, the owning it? Tell us about that.
Yeah. One of the first places I start with men is looking at a few things. One is I look at how they're really showing up in their body, because that reveals a lot. Our purpose manifests through our body, and whatever we're holding on to, not paying attention to, it's not getting through. And that's really frustrating for men, not to be able to generate what they want. And so whatever's in there, and a lot of it is shame, blame, and fault with men, and a lot of them don't even know it. So I start with their body and clearing that out, so they have much more freedom, and they start to feel sexy and alive again, and that's important.
Mojo is very important for all of us, for sure.
On both sides. sides.
And
Absolutely.
that's followed up with, purpose. Why am I really here? What turns me on and makes me feel alive the most? So much that if I get rid of everything else, this is the thing I can do most of the time and feel fulfilled.
Love that. So do you work in groups and one-on-one? Is that how it
Yeah,
works?
one-on-one groups and weekend retreats.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So what do you do on a weekend retreat?
Everything. The biggest one's purpose. And for men to be able to get away from all the external stimulation and the drive and really turn to silence, to listen to right here. And this is a different conversation that most men have never had, is listening to their heart for it to reveal why they're really here. And half the time they know, they just don't want to say it.
So how do you get men to get over their ego or their insecurities with that so they can embrace that purpose?
I think it's an ongoing process. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's an ongoing process of just speaking the truth regardless of how it sounds. And a lot of men will hold back. A lot of people think women experience emotions faster than men, but the male brain experiences emotions faster than the female brain. But the female brain will express it faster. We'll wait 3 to 6 seconds to 50 years before we tell people how we feel. And it's part of that is shame. When a 2-year-old boy cries, we're told to suck it up. A 2-year-old girl falls down and everyone rushes to her. So we learned that at a very young age. So it's that revealing, that level of ownership that he starts to have more breakthroughs. And his purpose just starts to manifest just beautifully.
Wow, it's so powerful. With articles I was reading recently was just about how men manifest their discomfort differently than women. They tend to be more heavily drinkers. They often do more drugs. They use distraction a lot more. Whereas women are much more intentional about sharing it and sort of dealing with it more in a sort of head-on way. And is there anything that you recommend for men that tend to distract themselves or numb themselves instead of facing, the discomfort they feel?
Yeah, they've got to have the support of another man who they trust, who's already done the work. Because we will delay taking care of things, we delay going to the doctor, and we don't want to confront things. If you look at the Me Too movement, a lot of that is men not confronting their stuff over 10, 20, 30 years. They get confronted once, and their whole life starts to break down because of it. And I always tell myself, look, whatever you don't want to confront, the universe will confront it for you.
For sure.
And you won't like it then. And you won't want to deal with it then either, but you'll have to. And so that's the big thing. It's them feeling safe enough to confront it and being here just like me and you right now and just speaking to it and going right at it.
So profound.
Yes,
So
it is,
important.
yeah.
Very, very good. You're very confident and you seem very clear. I remember reading a book, The Way of the Superior Man,
Yes.
years
Great
back.
book.
And I think that as, we all, and I don't think it just applies to men at all, like when people are purpose driven, when they have that, just like their higher power and their main purpose in life, there's nothing that's more attractive because you realize that this person has something that is guiding them that's important, and you can't help but respect that. You can't help but be turned on by that, right? And so to find someone's purpose is so important. So thank you so much for being a leader, both you guys, in that. And I think that I think this movement is just beginning for men. And women, we've been kind of on this bandwagon for some time, but men are just beginning to really do their inner work. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything that you're
amazing.
up to.
Great
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more on Good Morning La La Land.
Welcome back to Good Morning La La Land. We're having a very conscious conversation with two incredible men, Carl and Seth. I so appreciate you guys coming on. It's a really important conversation to have. And I think, the challenge for a lot of men is, I think a lot of men want to have the conversation, but I think they're concerned not only about how they'll feel and how they make the other person feel, but how they express themselves in ways that can be easily and well received. You guys do that so well.
Thank you.
So any tips for men that, just want to have the conversation and maybe they're a little uncomfortable with their own insecurities about it, whether that's how to speak to it, but also how to work through the feeling and discomfort of it all.
You said something about, it doesn't feel, sometimes it feels awkward or weird, and they have to really let go of, it may not look good or sound good the first few times you're practicing something you haven't done before, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, no one's great until they start practicing it, and it's really that first step, and I think a lot of it helps when you're face to face with a really powerful man who's inviting a part of you out that is uncomfortable and uncertain and awkward and probably doesn't want anything to do with it. Let's just keep suppressing it, pretend it's not there, but it will come back at some point anyway.
For sure, for sure.
My advice is always to just open your mouth and say something. You know what I mean? A closed mouth doesn't get fed. And it's basically, you just have to put yourself out there and just be willing to just be vulnerable and just be a man, So I always just try to be in tune with how I feel and vocalize that. And however it comes back, you'll never know unless you actually say something. So
Right,
that's
so
the biggest
important.
advice, yeah.
So in today's world, we know that relationships are changing dramatically. We have polyamory, we have open relationships, we have all kinds of things. And I think that men in particular, I'm sure have been very suppressed over the time of trying to fit themselves into the mold of what the culture has said. What do you guys think about that? Like, if there's a man and he's feeling like, I'm not necessarily a monogamous human being and I need to be truthful about that, but it's a very dangerous place for them to, speak their truth, right? So how do you deal with that with men? How do they deal
More
with that?
so in the past 2 years than I ever have.
for sure, right?
I don't think I'm designed for one woman. Or you don't want to be vulnerable with one woman, and the moment she finds something in you, you're ready to run to another one. I see that a lot. So what men need to understand is they can have it all with one woman. Anything they think they can experience by cheating or having other women, they can actually experience it with the one they're with. If they're living their truth, they get to have it all with her.
What do you mean by that? So if somebody say that they don't consider themselves monogamous and they're in a relationship, you're saying that they can have multiple relationships, as long as they're truthful about it?
Whatever feelings or needs they think they're searching after, you can actually have it in a really powerful
I get what you're
partnership.
saying.
Yeah.
So it's really just
Right.
looking. So do you not believe in polyamory or open
I
relationships?
don't know if it's a belief, it just doesn't resonate with who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is for some people and not for others, or do you feel like it's really just a misconception of that can't have it all with one person?
I've had clients who have gone down the path of polyamory, and they know why, and I know why, but they'll never change. And that's their path of having multiple women, multiple people, and that's their choice.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got hands of fury, all you need is one man. So
We got deep there for a minute, but I don't have an opinion on it, quite frankly. I feel like it's for each person their own expression, as long as they're not hurting or lying to anyone.
And I do think that you bring up a really great point, which essentially is understand your motivation and understand get at the core and the essence of what you're trying to achieve. A lot of times I thought, well, I really want the $10 million house. It doesn't mean that I don't, but what do I really want that house for? Oftentimes it might be just to entertain people and impress people, but the same thing I think is often true with men in the context of relationships, right?
Yes, absolutely. You hit it right on the button. It's like, well, why do I want this? Is it because I think that's what man's supposed to be, or because I don't want to deal with being with just one person?
It's a
and getting
great,
bored?
deep
A lot of men
cover.
get bored and they want variety. But that's why I said earlier, you can create that with whoever you're with.
Interesting.
I used to have an uncle that would say, I would always complain, I'm afraid even say, Rob, if you're bored, you're boring. And that's up to you, Rob. You're going to fix it.
that's so true.
Yeah. It's such a good point. You're bored. If you're bored, you're boring.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very good way to spice it up with some massage, bringing it in. For
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
I got a feeling Seth is never boring.
Yeah. Bring some oils. You've got oils, right?
In the
Relax,
back, yeah.
revive.
Renew. Yeah, a new oil line I'm coming out with.
Oh, nice.
Releases next month, so I'm super excited about that. It's never a boring moment. I try to keep it spontaneous and fun. To touch on what you guys were just speaking about, I think a big part of the monogamy comes into particularly how you grew up and what you're exposed to and what your everyday life is about. I feel like nowadays things are very, very different, and people don't have that same type of example to follow by, so they just become a product of their society. So now guys feel as if they can't be with one person because nowadays nobody really is with one person. And that's a big part of why, you know, we started to do our couples massage, because I wanted to have people organically fall in love with the idea of being with just one person. Because it doesn't have to be what you see on television all the time, which is guys just being dogs. And it's mainly because those are the expectations that are expected of them. Most people will live up to their expectations. If they assume guys are all going to cheat, then they're most likely just going to cheat because they're like, well, nobody's really expecting me not to. That's just what we do. I personally don't believe in that. I think that one woman should be more than enough, but that's just because I come from a background in which I find one person to be fulfilling. Have your fun, be young, but at the end of the day, don't let that be your whole life. I mean, that's just a very shallow, lonely life to have, and eventually they'll be 50 years old in the club, wondering why they didn't, you know, follow that, you know, now.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, so just don't be a boring person.
Exactly.
That person's going to stay in love with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep it fun.
I love
keep
it.
it
Well, I
refreshing.
love the conscious conversation. So important, you guys, and knowing that each and every one of us has our own truth. May you be true to that. And thank you so much for joining us. We are live every morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Times. Please like, share, and comment. Love the ones that you support, and then we'll love you back. Have a great day, you guys.
It's
Love
going to be
yourself.
a good morning, La La Land.